All right, I'm clicking Start Broadcast now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
A warm welcome to our lunchtime webinar. My name is Carrie Raynham and I will be the moderator for today's session. Today's webinar has the title Autodesk Solutions and BIM Level 2. This is presented by Lee Mullen, Construction Technical Specialist for Autodesk, and we are pleased to welcome Tom Hughes, Project Technology Consultant for Mott MacDonald, as our guest contributor. Lee Mullen has over 10 years experience in BIM and pre-construction workflows and leads the European Construction Virtual Team at Autodesk. He has a deep understanding of the Autodesk portfolio and the interoperability workflows across it, and is a regular contributor to the Autodesk construction user community. Tom Hughes is a project technology consultant for Mott MacDonald as part of a global project technologies group. Tom specialises in the UK Level 2 requirements, common data environments, infrastructure BIM, and Autodesk best practice in his role. Before we start, some quick comments on housekeeping. The presentation will last approximately 50 minutes. After that, we have 10 minutes for questions, and you'll be able to post questions during and after the presentation via the webinar application. You will see a facility to leave a question in the menu on the right-hand side, which says Chat, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible in the time we have. Should we run out of time, we will follow up with you afterwards. The webinar will also be recorded, and we will send an email with the recording and the slide deck to you as soon as it is available. So with that said, I'm now going to hand over to today's presenters, Lee Mullen, to start today's webinar.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks everyone for joining. We have a very high attendance on this webinar, as it's obviously a very hot topic in the UK. Interestingly, about 2/3 of the attendees are coming from the UK. I'd also like to thank those from as far afield as India, America, and Australia who are joining us as well, who are obviously looking at parts of this mandate. So thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you find this next 50 minutes to an hour useful. Firstly, I'd like to just talk about the internet. And if you think about the internet, how originally it was started by a bunch of researchers in universities as a way to communicate. And as that was quickly adopted by a few of those experts and as a way to share information between different universities. That's quickly expanded. So enterprising individuals looked at ways in which that could help change our lives. So think about now how shopping, watching films, listening to music, every part of our lives has now been affected by how the internet has been improved and been changed and been taken from that small percentage of experts to a much, much wider community. That's what BIM's doing for the built environment. And BIM Level 2 we see as a stepping stone to take BIM from those experts to the masses, in the same way in which an MIT communication portal graduated into Amazon. This webinar is talking about the ways in which Autodesk can support that change to your business and to the industry. So what I want to talk about today, and what we will cover in this webinar, will be around practical solutions for BIM Level 2. We'll talk about a number of solutions for tools such as Revit and Civil 3D, as well as additional tools which will help you along the way. Places where you will be able to get help and support for this transition to BIM Level 2. And also we're going to cover the building and infrastructure parts of a built environment. There's quite a lot to cover, and there's lots of products which we have within our portfolio. There's lots of different industries and trades that are involved in any building product, and as a company we have lots of solutions which helps provide for that, and we also have to work with many solutions that aren't part of the Autodesk portfolio. So this webinar is going to cover quite a lot of that, but we're not going to be able to do an extensive, comprehensive how to support BIM Level 2, but we will hopefully be able to give you some pointers and direction of where to look next. So what we're not going to cover in this webinar. we're not going to be able to cover what is BIM Level 2. There are lots of resources about this already, and there are many accessible via the internet, as previously mentioned, and then probably within your own companies and own training mechanisms. So therefore, we're not going to go into the detail of the process documentation. Again, there's people who can help with this. There's lots of resources available to help with this as well, and we'll talk more about that later on. And we're not going to talk about how we support BIM Level 3. As you may be aware, BIM Level 3 is something supported by the UK government, announced by George Osborne in the last budget, that there'll be funding towards supporting that next step. But at the moment, there is nothing actionable to support. We do support that principle, but as Mervyn Richards announced at a BIM Prospects conference around 3 weeks ago, until everyone's working comfortably with BIM Level 2, we won't be able to work with BIM Level 3. So that is the purpose of this webinar. How do we get that 10% of BIM users up to 80 or 90%? And this won't be an exhaustive how to do BIM Level 2. I would love to be able to tell you how to do it within 1 hour, but many people who have been looking at this for the last 5 years since it was first announced are still working at the exact ways to do that. So what we want to do is we want to talk about ways in which we can support that with technologies and processes to support that. So we're going to pass quickly back to Carrie to go through an initial poll, because I just want to understand who we do have within the webinar.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Lee. So the poll is now open. Please vote by clicking on the description that best describes your company. So which of the following best describes the type of company that you're working in? So I'll leave the poll open a few moments so that everyone has time to vote. So thank you very much for participating. This will be very helpful as we start to look at the content within the webinar today and make sure we cover the key areas that will be of interest to you. Okay, so just a few more votes coming in and then I will poll. So last 5 seconds, if you can all place your votes, please. Lovely. Okay, so I can see that we've got around 80% of you have voted, so I'm going to close the poll now. Okay, and share the results with you. Here we go. So as you can see, we've got a large number of people in the design teams, but also a good smattering across, of course, our main contractors and subcontractors, as well as owner-operators. Back to you, Lee.
Thank you. That is quite interesting, because I think the design teams were probably the first ones to adopt BIM and 3D processes, but as far as BIM Level 2, it's probably one of those where they've been looking at how their processes support downstream. So if you just want to take the poll off, Carrie, and then we'll go to the agenda. There we go. So what we are going to cover in this webinar is things like classification, COBie, how third parties that plug into our products can support these processes. And later on we're going to have a guest speaker, Tom Hughes from Mott MacDonald, who's going to talk about infrastructure and how standardizing processes and COBie have been relevant to the work that they're doing. So what is BIM Level 2? There's lots of documents and documents that are available for this to tell you more detail of the exact hows and whats. But it can be summarized probably with 6 key points. Defining what's needed originally, and then creating a plan to be able to deliver it, making sure everyone's capable of doing that, generating that information, which isn't just 2D, 3D, and those kind of design documentation. There's also lots of other documentation needed as well. How do you manage that documentation and data? And then how do you comply with the rules? To do a BIM Level 2 project, you need to comply with all of those steps. So you need EIRs, you need BIM execution plans, you need to be able to make sure that you comply with this. So this is how we approach BIM Level 2. And we see it as broadly split into 2 areas. The solution-led parts of BIM Level 2, which are very much for technology pieces and how we can support you on a day-to-day basis. But then we also have the process-led piece, which is about how you generate that, how you define what's needed, and then ensure that everyone's capable. And to both parts of that, you then need to prove that you're complying with the rules and everything that's been set up for you. So we're going to concentrate, at least initially in this part of the webinar, on the solution-led parts. So classification. You may not be aware, but on classification tools, we have a free plugin which goes into Autodesk Revit called the Classification Manager. This has been available since last year, and we recently updated it with Uniclass 2015 and the latest versions of that. So this is a free tool that allows you to select a UK database which contains Uniclass, also add additional custom databases if you want to add your costing, classifications and any other details to that. Come into Revit to identify those elements for classification, assign multiple classifications, so this could be for the individual products and for the systems. And then the purpose of a classification system is to allow you to have that common language that you can speak to downstream, which means that you can then identify if you have items coming from multiple different packages, which are the common elements. So we've now got a video to demonstrate this. I'll apologise if the streaming isn't ideal based on the number of attendees and the internet speeds that we have. Hopefully you'll be able to see flashes of this video. We will provide links to the videos afterwards so you can watch them in more detail. So the classification tool allows you to select a classification, like I say, a classification that you can work to. So this could be Uniclass 2015. It could be one of the American classifications like master format or uniformat. Then it would allow you to select a number of items in one group and simply just add the classifications that are required. So this would allow you to then add the product classifications and those system classifications to these light fixtures. So this should allow you a quick, easy way to allow you to add that classification data as you go along, rather than retrospectively trying to refit a model with this classification data. On the infrastructure side, we also have the ability to add classifications using the new property sets tools within Civil 3D. We're going to talk about this in more detail later on with Tom, and he's going to talk about how he's used property sets. But this allows you to take what has traditionally been a line-based drawing to extract solids and essentially make this a 3D model, add property sets to those objects, add that classification data relevant to whether you're working with the Environment Agency or Highways England or another organisation, and again be able to use that data downstream. So this would allow you to easily be able to do things like clash detections based on certain types of items, or being able to commission items as a group downstream. The next step we've got is around standardizing processes. Now this is essential to BIM level 2. If you're all working on a single project, you want to be able to make sure that everyone's using the same templates, the same title blocks and the same tools within the products. So here we're going to show in Revit the ability to use title blocks that use shared parameters and project parameters to standardize the ways in which the sheet names are being created. So it's using the standard meta tags that need to be created for these objects. So for example, project location, volumes, floors, unique numbers, and being able to create all of those against the sheet, and then be able to go into one of the schedules to then drive the namings of those sheets based on revision codes, status codes, or for a particular use. So this would allow you then to have one central location to drive all of the project naming as you're going along, and then also be able to make sure that this is standardized across your project and your company, so you can then reuse this time and time again. So it's very important to talk about how you use templates at the start of a project to make sure that everyone's working to that same standard. If you look at Civil 3D as well, we also allow you to do the same thing there, and Tom again will talk more about this a little bit later. People on the call may have heard of Dynamo. Dynamo is a visual programming tool which allows you to essentially access the APIs of Revit in a more easy to use, user-friendly way. We've got lots of examples where people are using Dynamo to look at certain parts of this BIM UK mandate, to use, for example, Excel to be able to drive the project naming, and people would be able to use classification and drawing types in an Excel project to be able to then link to Revit and then drive the naming standards there. It's a very powerful tool. It can be also used for validation. It can be used for even doing your design. So it's a very, very interesting thing to look at. Now the next step I want to talk about is a common data environment. So the common data environment is something that could be set up theoretically within Windows Explorer. It's made up of kind of 4 key areas. It's a shared workspace with the ability to set permissions on those workspaces, so certain people get access at certain times to that information. The ability to have some kind of audit trail, and the ability to have a process to allow you to take it from one stage, for example work in progress, into the next stage of shared. So we've got a video here, and we'll share the full video, the full 10-minute video, but we've got a sped up video here to show how in 10 minutes you can go from nothing to be able to create a CDE for your project using a new tool called BIM 360 Docs. Now what you may be aware of is this is previously Project Alexandria. This got released at the end of January, and this has had now 3 releases with updates to the functionality, and this is you'll see more and more updates over the coming months. So this would allow you to quickly set up a project environment based on the standards you need for your project. Broadly, they're going to be covering work in progress, shared, published and archived, but you may also need additional folders to include BIM execution plans, COBie data drops, EIRs, MIDPs, and give access to those to different people. You would then need to be able to add meta tag information, so for example status codes or revision details on there, and then you would want to add people to those projects. Now what you can do is you can set, for any individual on the project, you can set them to a particular role as well. So you could say, for example, that all of your architects fall under the architect role, but also a document controller role. They would then be able to get access, different levels of access in different folders depending on what you needed, which would then help you meet part of the level, the 1192 Part 5 part of the mandate, which is mostly around working out who needs access to what information at what time, making sure you question that as you go along. Now the permissions that you set can be based on the individual, can be based on the company they work for, or the role that they have. So you can say, for example, all the architects have access to a particular folder, and the contractors have access but only to be able to publish information or to publish, view and edit that information. Here we're then uploading a number of files. Apologies if there's any delay. But we're now uploading a number of files, and within 10 minutes we've gone from nothing to a CDE which has information which is viewable, either in 2D information and being able to access, for example, the property information behind a DWF file, or 3D information, for example, in various different formats. In this case we have an IFC file, and we would then be able to identify a wall and the property information behind that, such as materials that have been accessed, or any of the classification data that we have there. The full video will be available online afterwards, so don't worry if it didn't refresh quickly enough for you. So as far as being able to create different project structures, that's one of the things that BIM 360 Docs was set up to do. It's free at the point of access with paid features. Essentially, it's a freemium model which allows everyone to sign up for free, access this for a completely free 30-day trial. And then there's paid features as you go on, which allow you to do additional items. So this allows you to quickly set up this project structure, quickly set up, for example, status codes and revision codes, and then these can be driven against any particular item within any particular document within BIM 360 Docs. You may also have different project structures depending on how you work. So, for example, you may want to use the status codes as a way to drive permissions for particular users. So, for example, if you're looking at making sure the asset information model is only available to a certain group of users, you may want to use that as a way of setting up your project structure. So what we want to do is provide you with the flexibility to be able to do that. One piece of new functionality which will be coming out in the next few days is the compare feature, which allows you, you may see in the center of a project, you've got a drag bar which allows you to compare two versions of the same document. So you can then see what changes have been made between one version and the next. So this will be coming out in the next few days. We also have some advanced features such as extracting a Revit model and extracting the 2D sheets and 3D views from that model. We'll also allow you to be able to extract title block information from PDFs. So if you're using these standardized templates, you'll be able to quickly identify the status codes and use information from any of those documents, which will allow you to then more easily identify which documents can be used for which purpose. We also allow you to do markups in 2D and 3D documentation. And we also allow you the ability to create issues. So this will help you with your RFI process. So this would allow you on your mobile devices, such as your iPad or iPhone, to be able to access the documents that are available to you based on your permission settings, to then be able to run through any RFIs which you may have. So, for example, a door orientation that's in the wrong way, or maybe some additional information which is required. We then have a process to follow these issues through. So once that issue has been completed and all those issues have been signed off, you would then be able to move them from one approval gate to the next, through the approval gate into the next phase, so work in progress through to shared. So again, you'll get access to these videos afterwards, but you can then type official responses, which are then part of your audit trail, to then say if you did build from a particular drawing, what were the issues that were created during that process, and were they met or completed before moving on. And those issues would then also be available on the web, again with that audit trail around how they've been answered, whether they've been completed or not. So that's great for everyone who's looking to manage those documents, but how do you manage that work in progress design information? You may be aware of collaboration for Revit. For those who are aware of Revit Server, think of this as Revit Server within the cloud. This is the next generation of Revit, which allows you to communicate between different offices around the world, or even just across the other side of the desk, and it would allow you to have your Revit model within the cloud and manage those revision cycles with work sets available to certain users with certain permissions. So this will allow you to take you through that work in progress phase until those drawings are at an appropriate stage ready to be shared with the wider world. Now, interoperability has obviously been a very key area for a long time now at Autodesk, and we've long supported the Building Smart definition of Open BIM, as well as a large number of other open standards across infrastructure, across building, and even across manufacturing. If you look at the 2025 Construction 2025, prefabricated items, so manufactured items, are going to increasingly become part of the built environment. So to support those open formats for manufactured data is going to be increasingly important to be able to deliver these projects. As far as Open BIM and how we support it, we've long now had Revit as an open source IFC exporter and importer. We also support IFC in a large number of other packages, from design packages such as AutoCAD Architecture to design review packages like Navisworks and BIM 360 Glue. Within the open source exporter, you may be aware of the one that's straight out of the box. There's also one that's available on SourceForge, which allows you the latest version of of this open source exporter, and that works to all the a large number of international standards. So, for example, 2x3 coordination view, and extended FM handover views. We've supported it in various different applications, and you may be aware last year we started supporting IFC export from Civil 3D. Now, Civil infrastructure doesn't yet have a full definition for IFC and what that should look like, but we think it's important to be able to work in that interoperable workflow so you can then get that data out to be able to do that clash detection or collision detection where needed. And we're long going to carry on supporting that as we think it's important to those workflows, all the way from design through to construction and commissioning. If you have a look at the website, autodesk.com/IFC, that's got lots more information on, for example, the IFC exporter, the COBie extension we'll talk about later, Revit model checkers, and any of the other interoperability standards that we currently support. Which takes us to the next piece, which is around COBie. COBie is one of the few defined deliverables for each of these level 2 projects. So you will be required to provide a native 3D model, 2D PDF sheets, and then a COBie spreadsheet, or it could be SQL, or it could be an IFC form of this data. It's essentially a standardized data structure for your model. So on the building side, we have a COBie extension for Revit. This has been available for quite a while now. For those who are aware of it, great, have another look, because we've made some big improvements to that, so allowing you to do additional mappings. For those who aren't aware, we will provide you with a link at the end of this webinar. This allows you to create COBie parameter fields within your Revit model against any object, populate that from the Revit data, and then be able to export out to that COBie spreadsheet after doing mappings to particular zones or spaces. If you weren't aware, you can actually provide COBie as part of an IFC file, and we have workflows to support that as well. So again, using that open source IFC tool for Revit, this would allow you to export out to that extended FM handover view. So again, that's another area you should look at. But we're aware that to be able to run these, to be able to export to COBie, you need to be able to validate that the fields have been completed and filled in, and this is what we have the model checker for within Revit. This would allow you to, using one of the standard checks that's out of the box, and again this is a free tool, to check that the relevant COBie data has been completed and filled in, and then to be able to create a report. So I'm going to show you how this works just in a quick video, and again you'll get access to this afterwards. This would allow anyone, whether they're a Revit user or not, to be able to open a Revit model, run a check, and these checks can be created and added as well, which we'll talk about in a second. And this is running a standard COBie check to look for all the relevant COBie data to make sure that there's information against, for example, facility fields or against particular components. And this will run through the entire model and make sure that COBie information has been completed. And then you'll get a nice easy to view report which will tell you whether or not you've passed or failed those checks so you can make sure that relevant information gets filled in. You would then be able to scroll down the report, just waiting for that to update on the audience view, be able to go through the report and identify any elements which do fail, so then you can select them, show them, and fill that information in there and then. So from a client's point of view, this would be a way to take that Revit model and to be able to verify that they've received all the information that they would need. From a designer's point of view, this would allow you to make sure that you have completed all the work that you need to complete before passing it to the data drop. We also have a tool to allow you to create your own checks. So this would allow you to take what has previously been quite a manual tool of understanding how Revit works to an easy wizard-based interface. So this would allow you to basically say, are you looking for a particular piece of information or looking for a particular blank field? Are you wanting to make sure that certain spaces have the relevant information or facilities do? And this would allow you to quickly step through this wizard process to create additional checks, additional groups of checks, and then pass them to your client or to other people downstream. But probably, the biggest thing that we've had to announce over the last few months has been a new tool to allow you to extend COBie output to the entire project team. So if you look at Navisworks, Navisworks is a tool that allows you to load over 50 different file formats, manufacturer's data as well as IFC data, infrastructure data as well as building data, and be able to bring them all into one environment. So we've built a COBie extension that allows you to bring all this information into Navisworks, map any field from your property data into the relevant COBie field, and then be able to export a COBie SQL or Excel spreadsheet. So we're going to show a video, and again you'll have access to this, and this is with an IFC file from Graphisoft, from ArchiCAD. This is actually, for those who are aware, there's recently some test files that were provided by Bill East, who's a creator of COBie, and Bon Bryan Architects, which have got all the relevant COBie information. And this would allow you to, using an ArchiCAD template, to be able to map all of those fields to the relevant COBie fields and then create your COBie spreadsheet. From there, you're then able to select items within the COBie spreadsheet and be able to either add additional information to them by pushing out to Excel and pushing back in, or being able to just view, for example, where a particular item is within the model, or which groups of items are associated with a particular space. One of the things that this allows you to do as well is to be able to configure your data drops. So if certain COBie information is available at certain times or needed at certain times, you can access those different data drops based on what you need. You can also add additional mappings to this as well, and again we'll provide all the videos at the end to demonstrate how this is done. And just quickly to demonstrate how this COBie mapping works, this would allow you to select any item or groups of items or set or selection set within BIM 360, within Navisworks, and in this case we're going to pull some information that's been pulled across from the field in BIM 360 field, such as serial numbers, installation dates, warranty information, and be able to map those additionally to those fields in COBie just by doing a drag and drop. And then you would also be able to, like I say, export this data out to Excel, pass that to your manufacturers or suppliers, get them to fill that information back in, import that back in, and that would then help you build your full COBie spreadsheet. We've had this in beta for a number of months. This was released about 3 weeks ago. And we've had some very positive quotes from our customers. So I'd like to thank those who were on the beta program for their hard work. So this is from Mike Turpin at Capita. And then we also have another quote from Gary Scott at Skanska. So we'd like to thank those for their support and help. This isn't the final version. We are looking to make further improvements as well. So feel free to contact us and suggest how this tool can be further improved. An important part of how you create these COBie drops is how you collect that data. So BIM 360 Field has now long allowed you to associate property information back to the model. So this would allow you to then take that model out to the field, collect serial numbers and installation information against those model items, and then be able to pull them back into Revit or Navisworks to then be able to create your COBie drops. But this would also then allow you to attach documentation to that, fill in checklists and create issues against them out in the field as they're being installed, as well as collect progress information. From an infrastructure point of view, there's one of the key areas why we looked at creating this COBie export from Navisworks was the ability to be able to create these COBie drops for infrastructure. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to pass on to Tom Hughes from Mott MacDonald, who's been working with these tools to be able to see how they can support the Environment Agency deliverables. So Tom, I'm just going to give you access to the keyboard.
Thanks, Lee. Okay, great. I'll just check I've got control.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So I'd just like to give a little background to myself. As Carrie mentioned at the start of the presentation, I'm a project technologies consultant for Mott MacDonald. I've been Mott MacDonald for 8 years, not a project technology consultant the whole time. But actually my sort of history with Autodesk product goes back a little bit further. So in preparing for this presentation, I started to have a little think about my background, and actually I can sort of trace it back to my degree. So I've got a master's degree in civil engineering from the University of Bristol. Approximately 10 years ago I used Civil 3D as part of one of my design projects later on in the course to really look at sort of site layout, understanding sites and optimizing site design. And that, as an engineer, was my first introduction into the use of computer-aided design and how information being generated in software packages can really inform decisions and help you to kind of come to better solutions. So obviously after graduating and joining Mott MacDonald, I entered into the sort of the infrastructure team in my native office down in Bristol. And obviously that's given me a very broad range of infrastructure design, so right through from concept through to construction, from highways, transportation, light rail, power, utilities. And obviously coming in as a graduate with a little bit of experience in some of the 3D software, that was something that continued through that design, sort of 2008, 2009, 2010. It wasn't purely Autodesk tools, so 3D design software from other vendors as well. And I think it's really poignant talking about level 2 today. So Lee mentioned the BIM Prospects conference that was 3 or 4 weeks ago now, and I actually joined Lee on stage at the time then as well to give a similar presentation. And one of the key messages there was about the UK level 2 mandate and how that was driving skills into the UK construction centre, and I can say a first-hand experience that I've benefited from that. So within Mott MacDonald there was a response to the 2011 construction strategy, there was a BIM implementation plan for Mott MacDonald as a group, and personally where that affected me was that for every office within Mott MacDonald in 2011 a BIM champion was identified. So obviously with a background in 3D design I was a sort of natural candidate for that. What was interesting was obviously my background was civil engineering and infrastructure, so across the group I was one of the early adopters of BIM for infrastructure. As part of that, moving forward, was the creation of a Mott MacDonald Civil 3D user group, and that was really about getting Civil 3D users together, sharing best practice, which in itself after a couple of years led to, in late 2013, me joining a central project technologies group. So project technologies is centralized, it's a global network of specialists around Mott MacDonald Group, and the importance of project technologies is about supporting Mott MacDonald projects deliver quality deliverables to their client using best in breed tool sets. So my initial input there was infrastructure BIM. I've broadened my experience now into the delivery of CD and UK level 2 requirements. The key thing led there was to the Autodesk Futures portal, so that was something as a sort of user, long-term user of Civil 3D. Being part of that Futures portal allowed me to across the industry interface with leaders in Civil 3D, InfoWorks, Autodesk vehicle tracking, and obviously now looking at Navisworks and the sort of the downstream use of information. I think the other part of that's obviously the labs projects, and as someone who's keen in pushing technology forward, a little plug for Autodesk Labs. Something if people aren't aware of, definitely have a look at. That's where you can, of the pre-release technology previews, and certainly some of the items that we've sort of talked about today were tested out in labs and are now available in products. It's a key thing for users to be involved in. So I guess the constant theme there, so whether it was my initial work in 3D design for infrastructure, whether it was as part of this Civil 3D user group within Mott MacDonald at the sort of early inception of Level 2 BIM, or even going through into the Futures portal, there's always a slight limitation in the amount of information that could be put into the infrastructure design models. And so that's something that in this year, some of the features that have been added to Civil 3D really allowed us to start to address. And this is where my sort of crossover between supporting projects and looking at technology really helped me to identify some potential workflows. So we'll cover in more detail my involvement in the Environment Agency Water and Environmental Management Framework, but that was the project need for information that allowed me to look at some technology workflows as part of the Futures portal. We'll look at specifically the creation of asset management capability, so that's really the employer's information requirements from an asset information perspective. And what I want to cover, sort of the remaining 7 or 8 minutes that I've got left, is the workflow. So it's COBie in, COBie out, and I've got personal feelings that where we can progress most of the industry is really sharing these workflows, not holding on to them to ourselves, getting out there, kind of sharing the practice, letting people comment on them, and developing them as a community. So this is the third time that I've given this presentation in various forms, either to client organisations, into specialist working groups, and now onto quite a large platform with Autodesk here. So UK Level 2, the Environment Agency, and really what does that look like? So I've mentioned the Environment Agency's Water and Environmental Framework. So that's a 6-year framework that started last year in 2015. My role in that is as Project Technologies Consultant from Mott MacDonald, was asked by the Mott MacDonald Framework Manager to support a sort of BIM champion role for Mott MacDonald in the delivery of information on that framework. And an important part of that framework, being part of the UK mandate, is that BIM has been part of the tender process and onwards from projects from last year. So we've got quite a mature approach to BIM on the Water and Environment Framework. And Mott MacDonald are one of 10 key supply chain members that are part of a suppliers working group. So we come together on a regular basis to discuss the requirement. And as you can see there, we've got a progressive approach. So this track 1, the Level 2 mandate and the requirements for Level 2, that's progressive over time. So that's about implementing and embedding skills to meet the Level 2 delivery requirements. So what about COBie? Because that's obviously my topic of conversation today. We're really keen to see how we can get COBie information into our infrastructure design models. So you can see here on the Environment Agency's own map where COBie sits. So the Environment Agency, obviously, huge owner of assets, and principally infrastructure assets as well. Yeah, there's a few buildings, but the majority of the Environment Agency assets are infrastructure orientated, and there is that common misconception that COBie and infrastructure don't mix. But I think, bearing in mind that we've got a UK requirement, and bearing in mind that COBie is the method for delivering information to our clients, we've obviously got to look at how that relates to our clients' requirements. So what we've got from the client side is the CAMC program. So that's creating asset management capability. So we can see here what COBie looks like from an Environment Agency perspective. So this is the attributes within the CAMC asset management program mapped into a COBie spreadsheet. So we've got a full mapping there. So I think people on this call may well have sort of heard of the COBie analogy of a suitcase to carry information around. I sort of trying to coin one, maybe it's more like a shopping trolley, because both are capable at carrying things around. But I think the important thing when we start to look at how COBie is useful for clients is that we sort of need this shopping list. We need to understand what a client really wants in terms of information so that we can start to provide that in design, and we can follow that through into construction so that at handover we have the information the client wants delivered in a format that they can understand. Just a few little stats in terms of CAMC so you can get an idea of the scale. So within the Environment Agency, they've identified 52 principal asset types across their estate ownership, and that's comprised of over 300 components and well over 2,500 individual attributes within the CAMC data set. So you can see there that's quite a big kind of information requirement. So what was going to be my sort of bite of the elephant? Now, I obviously can't sit down and do the full 2,500 CAMC attributes, but I'd got an opportunity this year as part. Autodesk hold a Civil 3D Gunslinger event on an annual basis. It's something that I was invited to this year, and I'd got an opportunity to look at what advanced features within the upcoming 27 release could I start to leverage to give me the opportunity to deliver some of that information. So this isn't necessarily looking at any of the new features, but this is looking at how I can start to define from a graphical perspective what it is that my client's looking for. So I looked at some of the things I've been working on with the Environment Agency. We've been looking at some flood defence walls, and obviously that fits nicely. It's a linear infrastructure asset, and it's quite typical across a lot of our design programs. And you can see here, using Autodesk Subassembly Composer, very quick and easy to define a parametric object that meets that typical detail, but can also be adjusted to suit other design configurations. And I think the key thing to point out here, this is a single feature from the Environment Agency, but it's defined graphically by only 10 points and the links that make it up. But from an attribute perspective, from the level of information associated with it, we've got 63 CAMC attributes spread across various data drops. So here we can see the process for getting that data and aligning it to the data drops. So this is something that the property dataset definitions themselves aren't the new functionality, but the ability to append those to objects is. So what I had to think about was how I was going to define these property datasets and how that would then feed into the design packages, which would then feed into downstream. So thankfully, the way the Environment Agency had been thinking about CAMC sort of suited the way that we'd possibly think about CAMC across design and construction. So they've been looking at them and defining them by the data drops along the digital plan of work lifecycle stages. So that allowed me to build property dataset definitions that related to groupings associated with the data drops. So what do we do once we've got those property datasets defined? And this is where we've got two parts of new 2017 functionality within Civil 3D. So one side, Lee mentioned earlier about some of the management capability within Civil 3D. So that's the ability now to reference templates within Civil 3D. And what that allows across Civil 3D in general is much more leverage of a standard approach to the management of your styles and settings. Within this particular workflow, it gives you the opportunity to reference a template containing a predefined set of property data sets so that you've got a consistent application of property data to your objects within every design drawing. So it's a very good approach to the delivery of information on a project. We've then got the other piece of new functionality for 2017 is the ability to then add property data sets to drawing objects, and so you can see here adding the CAMC defence wall property data sets to that defence wall in Civil 3D, and how they are then populating the extended data tab within Civil 3D itself. So that's something that adds that functionality, and I think it's something that the Civil 3D users that are in the core and the ones that are sort of vocal in the communities or through the forums can really take a take congratulations that we identified this with Autodesk, and as the UK principally we're the ones that have pushed this, and certainly when we speak with Autodesk in the States, they're well aware of our requirements to get information into the infrastructure design models. So okay, that's great, information in Civil 3D. How's that going to be delivered to the client? So on the workflow is just simple Navisworks. So within the Environment Agency's employer information requirements, they identified Autodesk Navisworks Freedom as their preferred model viewer for deliverables on the project. So what we wanted to do first of all was just take our Civil 3D model and demonstrate that we could view the properties of the CAMC attribute data that we've populated in Civil 3D, and also it shows how it's still structured by the level of development lifecycle stages. And that's, you know, an important thing for the Environment Agency, because as the projects progress, they can quickly and visually confirm that they're at least receiving information they expect to receive at every stage of the project. But obviously that's, you know, that's only one use of the information, and this is where really my my work with Lee sort of started to get more involved at the sort of beginning of the year, was to, at the time, look at the Navisworks COBie beta. Obviously now that's been developed into real product that's available to everyone. But what we wanted to look at there was how we could map the Civil 3D property data sets to the COBie export tool. And obviously that was, at that point, there was some manual mapping that had to go on there. But as a proof of concept, we were able to take the Environment Agency formatted COBie data spreadsheet with the CAMC attributes, and where we'd got the attributes for the defence, we'll map those back so we could extract those from the Navisworks model and populate the spreadsheet. So that's a really positive proof and work of concept there. Obviously that then gives us the opportunity to look at developing that. So what are the outcomes? Obviously we've got that working proof of concept, and that's excellent. That's something that I've been able to present to the Environment Agency and the working groups. That's something that we can develop within that particular client organisation, but obviously it gives us the opportunity to look at that for other information requirements. We've shown that reference template can be used as part of the workflow for property data sets, and that again is a very good demonstration of management capability for information within Autodesk infrastructure projects, and that we've got the ability to map COBie from the Navisworks export to the employer information requirements for specific asset management information. So that again, a great outcome from me as a proof of concept. And principally the main point of this is extending the graphical and non-graphical sort of capabilities of Civil 3D, giving the information that we need. Quickly through the next step, and where we're probably a little short of time. So we've got the tools to sort of automate manual bits of the workflow, so really pushing the sort of, can we get sort of the COBie requirements in, COBie requirements out without any sort of manual mapping. Some pilot projects, so that could be specifically on the EA, but also further afield. And then other object types. Obviously we've got a broad range of object types within Civil 3D, and how do we adopt those? And then the extended proof of concept discussions with Lee for construction data. So I'll wrap up quickly and hand back over to Lee. Just like to say thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tom. I think it's really useful to kind of see how this works on a real project as well, and particularly one that's not always building-centric or Revit-centric, because we know that's how you have to work within the real world. Obviously, we're running towards the end of the webinar, so I just want to fly through some additional important parts. So how do you get help? It's not just support from the products and the technology. What we want to talk about is how do you define what's needed, how do you get that plan together, and how do you make sure everyone's capable? Well, that's where our reseller network can come in, either working directly with us or working with our resellers to get those trainings and certifications to make sure people are capable, or being able to understand what your requirements are. If you look on our website, you can easily locate a reseller either near you or one of our platinum, gold or silver resellers to be able to support you where you need that help. And what additional help can you get? The out-of-the-box product isn't always the end of the story. what we often find is people want to start building on our tools, and we've long had open APIs to allow you to build your own tools, or for enterprising individuals or companies to build their tools on top of ours. So for example, the MBS have built their national BIM library tools on top of Revit, allowing you to bring COBie compliant information directly into the model. So this should then help you with that part of the process. We also have lots of free tools available and very cheap tools through the App Store. So if you notice when you're using the Autodesk products, a little X in the top corner, click that little X and that will take you through to the App Store, where, for example, this is XRev, a free tool to allow you to manage your revision cycles and your revisioning of documents, sheets, and the model. So have a look at what's available that can help you fill in certain gaps. And we've got tools available on things other than Revit as well. For example, this is iConstruct, which is a tool on top of Navisworks that would allow you to export IFC files, but it also allows you to do things like add data to models. So if you've got a dumb model, you can add that classification data later on using this iConstruct tool. And that's where we come from. As a company, we've long had open APIs to allow people to build on these tools. But for the last 5 years now, we've been building cloud services, a very strong cloud view with the ability to access that data. That has now become a very robust tool, which we're now opening up to this Forge platform, which is $100 million worth of funding and tools and support to be able to build on these cloud platforms, whether A360, BIM 360, or just a large model viewer. As far as where we're currently at, this allows you to, we've got a large Forge conference coming up in June. We've got lots of information available online. And this is about looking at the next generation, the next platform for the industry. So if you think about what the cloud allows, it allows a kind of connectivity that wasn't previously possible. But if you think about every time you've had a connection project from one tool to another, it's generally involved lots of middleware and lots of different ways of accessing the different programs. Cloud tools allow you to quickly access data within the models, within the 2D sheets, within the 3D models, to then be able to start creating that connectivity that wasn't previously there before. So where does that fit in the entire workflow? Well, as far as taking you from design through to handover, we've got workflows to allow you to support that fully Revit environment where you can go from Revit through to BIM 360 to start collecting data, to then push out to COBie or out to a CAFM system like FM Systems, or our mobile first maintenance tool, Building Ops. But we know most projects in the UK have a requirement to look at using some non-Autodesk products. So you can still use that Glue or Navisworks platform to pull together those models and drawings from multiple environments, bring them into field for commissioning, and then push them out either to COBie or into an FM system. So whichever stage of the RIBA plan of work, we do have tools to support that, whether you're coming in from the start or you're coming in later on in the process. We do have tools which match up to whether it be those early stage sketches and designs through to commissioning, delivery and handover. So on that note, I'd like to kind of talk quickly about where the additional resources are, where you can get more information about how we support BIM Level 2, and also where you can access these free tools such as the COBie exports, model checkers and classification tools. And they're all available through these links. And then we'd just like to finish off with a quick poll just before the top of the hour. Apologies we've not been able to get to all the questions. We will answer them individually, but if we get a chance, we'll try and answer a couple now. But if we can just go to a quick poll, Carrie.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this is just to gauge how useful you have found this webinar. So having watched this webinar, how do you feel about BIM Level 2? So there's 5 options going from we already meet BIM Level 2, this helps the wider team, to we already meet BIM Level 2, but I've learned something new. We can't meet BIM level 2 yet, but this has helped. We can't meet BIM level 2 yet, and we're still not sure how. And then finally, we can't meet BIM level 2, and we won't be pursuing it either. So if you guys can all just let us know where you are, that'd be very helpful to see how you've found this webinar. So I can see all the votes coming in. Thank you very much. I'll just leave the poll open a few moments more so that everyone can have the opportunity to place their votes.
No problem. And whilst we're just finishing off that poll, for any of your colleagues that you think would find this webinar useful, we will be sending out links after the webinar to not only a copy of this presentation but also the video and the various videos that were in the presentation as well.
Great, thanks Lee. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now and share the results. Can you see that there, Lee? So we can see that 50% of our attendees are telling us that they're not able to meet BIM level 2 yet, but the webinar today has helped, so that's great news.
Okay, that's really, really good to hear. So yeah, if you just want to close the poll down.
Yep.
So thank you for that. I think that's where we see the industry at the moment, and you know we are there to help, whether directly or through our partners. So don't feel afraid to start asking for help. That's where we're currently at as an industry, and once we get to that BIM level 2 stage, we can start looking at how BIM can become the Amazon or the Google of the built environment. Just to close this off, I just want to talk about some upcoming webinars that we've got. So we've got one tomorrow about the impacts of BIM for the rail industry, and then we've also got 2 more webinars about BIM 360 docs. Carrie, do you want to just talk about those?
Yeah, sure. So if you are brand new to BIM 360 docs, want to find out more about this particular tool in depth, the future of managing data on the 10th of May is the webinar for you. If, however, you've already started your free trial of BIM 360 Docs, we do have a live online Q&A where you can ask the BIM 360 Docs expert, and that's coming up next Wednesday, and that will be at lunchtime as well.
Cool, thank you. If we do have chance for anybody who does want to stop on, we've probably got chance for a couple of questions. Karen?
Yep, sure. So we've had a lot of questions come in. As we've mentioned, we won't be able to get back to you all. We will make sure that we follow up with you individually if we're not able to answer your question now. So the first question I have for you, and this is possibly one for Tom, what challenges have you come across defining classification or information at data drops?
Great, thanks Gary. I think it's a big question across the UK currently, so classification, particularly around infrastructure. The Uniclass 2015 has gone an awful long way to provide us with classification for assets from an infrastructure perspective. Where we've had more input on a particular supplier-client arrangement in the Environment Agency and the Water Environment Framework, we've been able to look a little bit deeper than necessarily purely classification, but also look specifically at the asset types that client is an owner of, and the Environment Agency have worked directly with Uniclass to define Uniclass classification for their assets. So we've got quite a joined up approach there, but I appreciate there is challenges in potentially some of the other infrastructure assets and looking at classification. I think as we progress forward and as there's more maturity in delivering information on the infrastructure side, it's going to be an area of much discussion and debate, I suspect.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Tom. So the next question we've had come in is asking around BIM 360 docs, and particularly, how much does it cost?
That's always a good question. People like to know how much these things cost. So I've not got the exact details of how much it does cost on the paid version, but as I mentioned earlier, it's a freemium product, which means you can sign up for free today. You will get access to all the features for an initial 30-day trial period. After that, you can continue to use it with unlimited data, unlimited users, with additional features that are available and it works out under £3,000 for the course of a 12-month project. So you'll find that it's very cheap, very accessible, very easy to use. So yeah, so if you've not done yet, do go onto the website, sign up for a trial, see how it fits into your current workflows. It may help complement the current CDE, or it may help on those projects where you don't yet have one.
Right. And so related to that, there's been a question around whether you can use BIM 360 docs as a central file location.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the intention. Unlike many of the existing systems, so we've got existing on-premises tools such as Vault, and there's obviously many other programs like that available as well. And they've always been intended to be that common data environment, but essentially they've been retrofitted to allow you to do that. This would allow you to work from the other way around. This is a central common data environment that's built from the ground up to access all that documentation.
Great. And does the Classification Manager plugin for Revit also work with Revit LT?
No, you'll find that you'll need to go into full-blown Revit. Revit LT doesn't really support those add-ins in the same way the full version of Revit does.
Okay, cool. And does the Classification Manager, are the PAS 1192 draft title blocks available for Revit 2016, including the schedule?
They're currently not, but I know at the BRE they've looked at supporting this. What I can do is we do have a number of blogs, so I can make sure we share that after this blog as well with the examples which I've created. And if you have a look online, I know there's a number of people that have provided their templates up there as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So I've had another comment. All these tools are great, but how does this work from a client's point of view?
So from a client's point of view, it's mostly about understanding what you would require, what you would require at the end stage. So I know in October there's a validation piece which the clients need to be aware of. So they would need to know how to verify that the models and the sheets and the information they're receiving is up to the quality that they would expect. So that would be part of it. So that's where tools such as Docs and the model checker can be really, really useful. And also in Navisworks as well, being able to just see all that information as the Environment Agency are doing. So there are a number of tools that can support you in that process. It's mostly understanding what your end deliverables you would like are and how we can support it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. Another question on the Classification Manager. Is it only available for Revit, or is there an equivalent for Civil 3D? And perhaps in your answer you could also describe why this would be useful.
Okay, so the Classification Manager itself is only built on top of Revit. However, the new function in Civil 3D 2017 is allowing you to reference a template for these property sets. Now, those property sets can contain that classification information. Tom, I'd like you to come in here if you don't mind, just kind of talk about a little bit more about how you found it useful and how you've used it for classification.
Yeah, no problem. So exactly as you mentioned, Lee, the ability within the property dataset definition to build up property datasets based on a range of attributes. So principally we could take classification to be one of those attributes, and because of the way that you can build property datasets up, we did this sort of as a proof of concept level for the EA on the defence wall, but we could look at building lists into the property dataset definition. So we did that around one particular attribute in the defence wall. It wasn't a classification, but there'd be nothing to stop you developing a list-based property dataset that looked at the same. Maybe take Uniclass 2015 as a set of tables. Obviously, we can take that as a data export from the Uniclass 2015 website. So there'd be nothing to then stop us moving that into property dataset definitions. Obviously, we have to identify a way to automate that process, because I don't think anyone would like to be manually coding those in, but the technology is there, the information is there, and the opportunities to move that data from one platform to another is also there. So it's all possible in technology, but obviously it's part of the development of these new features in terms of building the tools that we need to use.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's worth commenting on as well is if you look at the focus on the UK at the moment worldwide, as we mentioned earlier, we've got people joining from Australia, America, India, Middle East. There's lots of countries, lots of client organisations looking at this UK mandate as a potential template. So I think it's fair to say that the product teams currently have the ear of the UK customers, but you know they want to understand what we're trying to achieve. So BIM 360 Docs, as a large part, was being built based on the fact that there was a requirement for a CDE that works within this modern technological world of cloud computing, and then this property set information was built largely as a requirement, based on the requirement of users such as Mott MacDonald. So yeah, so it's a very interesting place that we're in right now, and I don't think this is the end of the support you'll see for the UK mandate.
Okay, great. We've got a slightly controversial question, and that is around Navisworks, and particularly what are the benefits of using Navisworks over Celebri for model checking and information manager role?
That is an interesting question. So I don't think you'd see, so from my point of view, probably worth explaining, my background is I joined Navisworks Limited about 11 years ago. I was part of the acquisition from that. So the benefit that I really see around using Navisworks is the fact that you've got multiple different file formats. You've got over 50 different file formats from infrastructure to building to manufacturing. Now, why I think that's really important is if you look at your manufacturing tools, they generally have lots of open formats already to support those kind of data flows, so such as IDIS, and they don't generally look at building an IFC type workflow. Now, IFC is incredibly important, and I think you'll see it as probably very similar to the description which Tom used earlier, as a suitcase for information to take you from A to B. But you will still want to be using additional information within the native formats wherever you can. So whilst we support that IFC workflow, and we want to show how that works from design, coordination, right through to commissioning, we know there's always bits of the workflow which will require a non-IFC workflow, or you'll need to go through 6 or 7 steps to be able to create an IFC suitable for that purpose. So whilst I don't think it's an either-or question, I think you'll always have a portion of being able to look at certain elements in Celebri. I think Navisworks can be used for a much wider purpose.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lee. One final question, and that's with regards to what now? So for the 50% of our attendees that are not yet doing BIM Level 2 but would like to, and this has helped, what should their next steps be?
I think there's several possible steps you can take. I think one of the best steps you can take is to understand where you currently are at, and take an honest look at where you're at as well. There's no shame in saying we're not yet BIM Level 2 compliant. The important thing is understanding from there what steps you need to take to make those steps. I would look at creating a BIM champion role or BIM lead role to allow that person to understand the requirements and precisely what's needed, and then to be sharing information wherever possible. If you don't have an internal platform yet to share that information, please do. If you're not learning from project mistakes or positive experiences, that's something you should look to do as well. And then, use us, whether it be us directly at Autodesk or our large partner network. We're there to help you. So don't feel afraid to say we're not quite there yet, and use us to help you get there, and then understand what it means for your business.
Wonderful. Okay, unfortunately we are running out of time now. We will be following up with individual questions after the webinar, so never fear, we have got all of your questions and you will receive answers to them. So it just now leaves me to thank Lee and Tom for their presentation and the discussion, and to remind you all that we will be sending out a copy of the deck and the recording so that you can review again in slow time. So unless there's any further comments from our panelists, then I will be closing the call now. Thank you everyone for attending and participating, and we hope to welcome you to an Autodesk webinar again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.